welcome again to my latest edition of the Can We Talk Now podcast, as we still struggle to be able to talk a lot of the time. As I discovered, I was in Ireland last week, and I had a couple of shows going on where I was doing a bit of a Cannabis 101, and a lot of no radio wants to talk to me. A lot of people did not want to take part in my Can We Talk Now podcast, and so it is still an area where I'm desperately trying to kind of represent a lot of the patient voices and the people who just are not getting their voices heard. 20% of the Irish population are using cannabis, and there's a bunch of other plant medicines which we're going to get into a little bit today. And it's because I have an amazing guest. His name is Óscar Parés, a Catalan. We are in Barcelona. Welcome, Óscar, to I'm going to give a brief rundown. So Óscar is you've got a master's in drug addiction, you've got a bachelor in anthropology, you've got a bachelor of philosophy, and you're a director of social intervention, and you're also very involved in a group called ICEERS that we'll touch on a little bit. But this is a hell of a qualified voice, and you have been active in the cannabis social clubs in Barcelona, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. So thank you, Óscar, for coming along. Welcome to my humble pod.
Thanks, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here and to know you well. We have met in Barcelona, and it's always a pleasure to amplify our network. So thank you for having me.
Look, the pleasure's all mine. And so let's get straight into it, because I've only got a half an hour. I'm taking a half an hour of your time, which I'm very grateful for. And so give me a little bit of where we're at tell me a little bit about ICEERS, first of all, because you are one of the protagonists in that organization. What is ICEERS?
Yeah. So nowadays, I combine my professional work mostly in two organizations. One is ICEERS, or ICEERS, it depends of how you pronounce it, but it's a foundation originally founded in the Netherlands, but we have been always developing our activity here in Barcelona. So for many years, we had a double nationality, but ICEERS basically means the International Center for Ethnobotanical Education, Research and Services. So the key here is the word ethnobotanicals. Our object of work are psychoactive plants. So it's drugs that are naturally occurring in nature and have been around us for all the human history, and even before human history, they were there, mostly sure. So with what we do not directly work with the plants or the cacti themselves, we work with knowledge. So basically we do science, we develop knowledge about these plants, or we create we make allies in other parts of the world that want to raise this knowledge. We try to, with this knowledge, reform policy. So we do drug policy reform, but also other kinds of policy that are related to this phenomena. And then we do education. We try to disseminate all this knowledge, not only through science or political discourse, but also through the whole society. For example, we have been doing a lot of efforts in the cannabis field, but not only in the cannabis field. We mainly work with three plants. One is cannabis, the other one is ayahuasca, which is not a plant, as you know, it's a combination of two plants, but we consider it, let's say, in the realm of plants. And the third one, which is very interesting, is ibogaine. Ibogaine, ayahuasca, as you know, it comes from the Amazon. All the 9 countries that have the Amazon River, they have some kind of relation with ayahuasca. But ibogaine comes from the middle part of region of Africa, and it has totally different effects and totally different cultural context. So we dive mostly in those three plants. In our website, you will see a lot of information, but also about mushrooms, also about other plants which are not that popular and are used worldwide. So yeah, that's our object of work. Those are our methodologies. And for example, some examples, we do the World Ayahuasca Conference. We have done it 3 times. Wow. You have all the videos in our YouTube channel for free. We do, for example, the Ayahuasca Defense Fund, which is another project you can find in our website, where we help people all around the world who is prosecuted by the laws against the use of those plants. Not because of cannabis. Because of cannabis, there's plenty of people delivering this specialized support, but the other plants, most of the time, lawyers are not educated, judges are not educated, so we do a lot of work in that sense. We participate as expert witness in trials, and we try to defend always the human rights of the people who use those plants.
Can I interject there, Oscar? So what is the kind of, how would people be accessing those three plants that you're talking about, ibo and ayahuasca, in a European context? I mean, is it, they're completely illegal? What is their legal status?
In our IDF website, there's a map with the legality of every country, because it happens to be different in different countries in Europe. For example, in France is one of the more harsh laws in all Europe. In other places like Netherlands or Spain, there's a more open reality and a huge scene, and it has been for decades, so this is not something new. Somehow ICEERS, we created roots here because there was already a huge scene. We learned from elders, from people who was taking care of this before. So basically, this is the underground wall, even though in most of the places it's not illegal in the terms that cannabis is illegal, because as you might know, there are only 3 legal plants in the international treaties, which is the coca leaf, the cannabis, and opium. But the other plants are not in the international list. So it depends on national, like France that has prosecuted France, ayahuasca. But in most of the places, those plants are not illegal. What's illegal is to do extractions of these plants. So for example, DMT itself, it's illegal. For example, mescaline itself, it's illegal. But since there's a gray area of the use of these plants, there's a huge scene all around Europe and has been there for decades. So people access this through networks that talk about this. Or one of the things that maybe later on in this interview we can talk, there are also some very bad practices. You know that we live in the internet world, and also there's people that offers those services with having qualifications, and then we have also problems happening there. So from ICEERS, for example, we have another project which is giving free support to people that struggles after or before going to those experiences, because maybe they don't find the support that they need because it's only a weekend retreat. So some people need to be more in touch during the week after and before, because those can be very challenging experiences. Not for the majority of the people. As with many other drugs, most of the people does a responsible use of these substances, and that's through the community, and they know how to reduce harms. But sometimes challenges happen, and then that's why we try to improve in our services to better provide a safe space for these substances and those practices in our context and outside as well. Because I said I divide my work in 2 main professional roles. One is ICEERS, that I think we will go deeper in this conversation. But the other one that maybe I can just announce it, and maybe someday you want to invite me again. I don't know. I'm not sure. Let's see how we end. But it's an interesting project that maybe your audience is interested as well. Since 3 years, we founded in Barcelona the first psychedelic clinic. That's a clinic that nowadays the only psychedelic legal compound in clinic use is ketamine. Okay, psilocybin is not legal; it's only in research. MDMA is not legal; it's only in research. The only one and the only psychedelic clinics all around the world, most of them in US and Canada, are based basically using ketamine. So since 3 years, we founded Clínica Synaptica, and it's a place that we provide services mostly for people with severe depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts or situations. And now we are beginning to approach also the matter of chronic pain, because many times chronic pain is related to mental health, no, as we can imagine. So that's a new line of work that we have been pushing, and it's very interesting. Maybe another day we can go deeper.
Amazing. And but I know for a fact that my Irish audience, let's say, but we're broader than in just Ireland. But I know for a fact that there's huge interest in these areas and these other plant medicines, but people just don't know. I mean, we're still trying to kind of get over the cannabis stigma and all of that kind of thing. And Ireland has a great relationship with psilocybin because where our land is and especially is I think the season has kind of come to an end, but there would be a very strong season. I lived in a part of Northern Ireland, Portstewart and Portrush, and that area is renowned for the amount of mushrooms that are growing up there. So it's the combination of the maritime climate and just it's something that we're very aware of. We also have, and it's something that I like to get across in the Irish context, we have a lot of issues that are kind of related solely kind of Irish issues, in the sense that because we had 30 years of the Troubles, I'm sure you're aware of that. In Northern Ireland, we had a lot of bombing and violence and all of that. So we have our own PTSD that doesn't get so readily recognized, and people do find there is lots of mental health challenges going on in Ireland that is only recently been discussed. So it's interesting that we have a body out here. I will have links for all the things we talk about in the conversation down below. And you're looking after people. That's what I see. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Well, this clinic is using only ketamine. As you know, right. Ketamine, for example, does not fall in the realm of ICEERS because ketamine is a synthetic substance that has been used for 60 years nowadays. And since the 15 years, the anesthesiologists that were using it, because it's an anesthetic product, begin to see that it had good effects in mental health. So it jumped from the anesthesiology paradigm to the mental health paradigm. And well, it's very interesting. I could be talking for hours of this. I don't know, it's the objective, but it's very interesting to be used in clinical settings because the effects, the strong effects of ketamine last 1 hour. So it's easier to run a treatment that it's therapy at the end. Most of the importance of the treatment, it's not the substance itself, but it's the psychotherapeutical approach to what happens to the patient during those experiences and what he does between experience and experience. So it's better to be seeing the patient like 8 times during 2 months and doing a huge process to overcome all those mental health issues, rather than thinking that in one night, taking one substance, you will get rid of all that. No, so mental health is complex and we are still learning. We are doing research. If you check our website, you will see that we have a blog where we also try to educate about this, to how this has to be understood in society. So there are many challenges. We are still learning, but we are happy because we have had some good results, even though, like always, this is not for everyone. It's not working for 100% of the people that comes to the clinic, and we are seeing who works better, who works not that better. So, well, it's a new and interesting path that it's opening recently.
Certainly. And integrative medicine is really kind of broadening out to bring in all these plant medicines as part of that. So, I mean, integrative medicine is like something that I feel like I'm almost a living embodiment of personally, because I stopped my PPMS, halted at least, with using a lot of pharma. But now I use my plant medicines, my cannabis, my whatever, to treat and to create my homeostasis and keep my health strong. So in terms of I've segued a little bit into cannabis there earlier than I had intended, and but we're in Barcelona, which is the heart of the cannabis social club scene, and I know that you have been quite active. You've been bringing international committees to Barcelona to experience the social clubs. Do you want to tell me a little bit what's going on there with social clubs and you?
Yes, well, it's a long history, and I'll try to make it short. But as you might know, the first cannabis club was founded in Barcelona back in 2001. Okay, so now we are in 2024. That's 23 years of history. So I won't explain the whole history, even though it's interesting, and I have written it. I can share you a link also because it's written and it's in English. So the history, it's very interesting because if you know the history, you understand what's going on nowadays. But basically what's going on nowadays is that in the city of Barcelona, we have 250 clubs, okay? In 23 years ago, one club, and now 250, even though, as you can imagine, most of them are born in the last decade, no? So Barcelona is a 1.5 million people city, and we have 200 clubs. That's a lot of clubs in a small, for being a big city in Europe, it's a small city, 1.5 million. So as you know, that you live here also, in every neighborhood, there are several clubs. It's something normalized. It's something that it's integrated in the city. It's so integrated and normalized that the former mayor of the city, Ada Colau, she ran the city hall for 8 years. She developed a regulation of the activity of those clubs. That regulation was not the only one in Catalonia. In Catalonia, in the last decade, 44 municipalities issued their own regulations, okay? Out of Catalonia, only one municipality has issued a regulation, Donosti, San Sebastian, in the Basque Country. But this gives you a sense of how how things work in Spain, or how drug policy works in Spain, no? In most of the region, no regulations of clubs. In Catalonia, 44, and in Barcelona, one of the more interesting regulations was issued because it allowed those 200 clubs to remain on the city. So it's a good regulation. So it had some bias, but at the end of the day, it was a good regulation. So the activist or the representative of the clubs were happy with that. All right, what happened and what has happened always in this history, that even though a region that has a more progressive drug policy, as we are not an independent country, we somehow belong to Spain, even though there's a majority of politicians that are progressist, there's a minority which are more Spanish-minded. So what happens when in Catalonia a new law is approved that is very progressive? And not only about cannabis, about everything. What happens is that the few minority politicians say, this law is not legal inside Spain. So they send it to the Constitutional Court, or they send it to some court saying, this region has not the possibility to develop all these progressive laws. And what happens that after some years, we always lose. So all the laws that have been approved in many aspects of our life in Catalonia, but in the cannabis itself, it has happened because, as you might know, in 2017, the Catalan parliament approved a law to regulate clubs. So in the beginning, I was talking of the municipality of Barcelona, but in 2017, the parliament of Catalonia approved a law to regulate clubs. That was the only club regulating adult use in Europe at that time. Then Malta and Germany came, but in 2017, for 4 months, we had a law regulating clubs. But what happened? That the minority of politicians in the parliament said, no, in this parliament cannot do this law. They sent it to Madrid, the Constitutional Court, and it was suspended. The same happened with the law that Ada Colau approved in the municipality of Barcelona. So in 2021, the Spanish court say, the regulation that Ada Colau did for the clubs is not legal. So suddenly, the clubs lost the legal frame that they had in Barcelona. They had a legal frame to operate, that it regulated the hours that they can open, the safety measures, all things not about cannabis itself, but about how this activity has to work in the city. No? So this law was suspended, and they went backwards to the gray zone of the law, because suddenly they only became private clubs. So for some years, they had a specific regulation of cannabis social club. But when this was dismissed by the Spanish courts, they became private clubs. So we're in 2021, and they became private clubs. In 2023, the last year, there was a change of the political party in the City Hall of Barcelona. Basically, Ada Colau left, and Collboni came in. Collboni is the same political party that Partido Socialista runs in Madrid. So suddenly, the government of Spain and the government of the city of Barcelona are the same color. Okay, yep. That is not good for minorities always, no? When there's only one big political party. So when those guys step in the city hall last year, they say, we are going to end with cannabis clubs. Actually, the guy that they put, Albert Balla, that they put responsible of security issues. 5 months after being on that position, he publicly declared, I don't like the Barcelona of drugs. I'm gonna clean the city.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put more police on the streets because those guys are not so left like the others, and they want to bring more order and they want to be more friendly with the police. So suddenly clubs enter to the view of this guy to put order in the city. Actually, he should plan, it's called put order in the city. And one of the ideas is to shut down the clubs. So trying to end what has happened, basically this guy, after 4 months of being there and declaring that he wanted to shut down all the clubs of the city, he sent inspections to the clubs last Christmas. Inspections is the police and technicians of the city hall going to the clubs to see what's going on there, okay, to check. So basically, when they enter there, they begin to do photos or to report about the cannabis activity. Like they were taking photos of the ashtrays, if they saw some buds or something. So they were beginning to report, and their idea was, as you lost the regulation of a cannabis club, you are a private club, you cannot do nothing related to cannabis, which is somehow mind-blowing because they are cannabis clubs. But they were like trying to focus the inspections on showing that there was actually cannabis in the clubs. And of course, there's cannabis in the cannabis clubs.
Oh.
So after 6 months of doing those interventions, those raids, well, it's not raid because actually they ask permission to enter in. And if you don't allow them to enter in, then you get a fine. So somehow it's a raid because you have to let them enter. So 6 months after those interventions, 30 clubs, 30 of the 250, so it's still being a minority, but 30, it's not one or two, it's a lot. 30
Yeah.
of them have received a letter saying that, look, you had cannabis and you were doing activities related to cannabis. So you will have to shut down the club for 1 year. So they are going through the administrative law, not the penal code. So they are not threatening them to go to jail. They are threatening them to close the space. And for a small club, this is impossible to afford because you have to keep like paying the rent. You have to keep paying on the payroll your workers. So this is the administrative and economical collapse of most of the clubs. They won't be able to afford that. So basically, what happens in Barcelona is that the new city hall has crystal clear that they want to clean the city, and this affects to cannabis clubs because for them, cannabis is dirty and they don't like the idea of the cannabis in the city, and they are trying to shut them down through administrative law. And what we think is that this is an experiment to see what happens with the first 30, but that they will keep sending letters and no one is safe. So at the end of the day, the answer is that nowadays no one with a club in Barcelona is safe because they have this objective to shut them down and to clean the city.
It's horrible. It's like governance by judiciary, and it's shocking that and many people I know that would have been over. A lot of Irish come over to Spannabis each year, and in Spannabis there was there was a bit of a flashpoint with a lot of raids going on and ridiculous things happening, like outside Spannabis, which is a 30-year-old, I think it's almost 30-year-old festival now, and like everybody coming out of that place is going to be somehow smelling a little bit in their clothes or whatever, and they had police and dogs in the train station at the station outside Spannabis. And you're going, this is like getting very absurd. But lots of people that I know would have made the trip over to Spannabis and they would have been in clubs on that weekend and they would have been raided at doing exactly what you said. So what they were doing was gathering evidence then that they're using now to administratively try and close the clubs. So
but even though they try to dress it like a technical stuff, like very technical, it's political because even the text that they are writing, they are making it up and they are saying, so you can see, when you see the details, you can see that this is a political issue, but they're trying to sell it like, no, this is, you are not doing things properly, you will go out. So yeah, there's a huge challenge to the movement. And also Barcelona, as we began this conversation, it's the place where those clubs were born. So we think this is an exercise to see what they can do in other cities. So it's like an experiment. They can, because now they have the both political parties in Madrid and Barcelona, and maybe this is an example of how they can try to shut down first here and then elsewhere. So it's not.
And this is a supposedly left-wing government that's in power in both places, and even now we have the Generalitat, which is the regional government of Catalonia. That's left-wing as well. And you would think that this is the moment when that there should be a little bit of more progressiveness around Catalonia. Not happening.
That's why I tell you that if you know the history, you understand the present, because I'm not surprised. I mean, I understand that you are surprised because they pretend to be leftists. But Partido Socialista Obrero Español, the one that is ruling Madrid, Catalonia, and Barcelona, if you see what had happened during the democracy, the young Spanish democracy, which is 40 years, and they have been in power many of those 40 years, the main involution in drug policy has always been their responsibility. So, for example, what made Cannabis Club exist was when Partido Socialista set up a law that is the law that is called Ley Mordaza nowadays, that it might be familiar to you, but basically it's the law that allows police to search people on streets for drugs and to put fine them for drugs. So this law prosecuting the drug consumption or not also consumption, but also the transportation on streets is a law that was produced by the Partido Socialista. And connecting this to 10 years after, we had an issue with the heroin consumption and all the death in the 80s. But that was when they were on charge. So most of the people got infected of AIDS in prisons because those guys did not deliver shrinks, and most of the people got infected in prisons. And they were left political party running the country. So some of the major drug policy disasters in Spain during democracy had happened because of Partido Socialista. So that's why we are not surprised, because we know the history.
Well, look, thanks for that little history lesson, because honestly, people will perceive, because everybody knows somehow the PP, the Partido Popular, as being the kind of legacy, the Franco legacy party. This is what we would perceive in places like Ireland. But what you're kind of outlining there is that our so-called left-wing replacements are not behaving much better.
No, actually, well, that is also one of my favorite topics, no? How Spain works or does not work. But you can see that Partido Popular and Partido Socialista, in terms of morality, they end up agreeing I mean, it's not that different. It's a political party that supports one another in the core decisions of the politics. So
but this is happening everywhere. It's like all centrist parties are blurring, and they're really just. Ireland has the exact same thing. We're looking at another election. And our elections, that means another 5-year mandate, So we have only 2 parties since the creation of the Irish state. There's only ever been 2 parties involved, and I mean that's horrible. It's kind of like, if one party is fascism, then 2 is like, what's that? Medio, it's like half fascism. So we've just had 2 parties running Ireland for all that time. Also, they have their policies. They have no drug policies, even though we have the highest rates of overdose in the European Union. We've got problems with everything. We've got problems with alcohol. We've got four people a day dying from alcohol. Forget all the other drugs. But we don't really recognize this. We'll have our Taoiseach and our Prime Minister, and the English Prime Minister taking photographs with 2 pints of Guinness, because that's how we have to portray ourselves. So yeah, progress is very, very slow. What's your kind of feeling then for just to wrap up the social club thing? So what is it doomed, or is it
well, it's a very bad sign that those guys have put on the agenda the Cannabis clubs in the beginning of their 4-year mandate. No? Because when they want to do something, they do it like that, not at the end. Not the same doing it in the 4th year that in the 1st year. So I think there's an open fight, there's a challenge, and now also it's the moment for civil society to show what we are able to do. So yeah, Albert Batlle has challenged us, and it's the moment to fight back. So let's see how we can stand and how we can fight back. But there's a need to fight back, because if not, they can silently go 30 by 30, and in 4 years, no one will remain open. So
Yes,
there's a challenge, and we hope that we
slippery
receive
slope.
help. Yeah.
Mobilizing is another issue, and it's difficult, because I had Albert Theo on the call here a while ago, and we were talking about it was when we're trying to create a manifestation I met you in the Plaza Ayuntamiento, and but it really wasn't engaged, and I'm kind of going, if there's 250 clubs, it kind of felt like if they only sent their staff out for a night, they all have bud tenders, they all have people working security and all the in every single club. I was kind of going, well, there should be 1,000 people here at least, and it didn't. So like getting people to manifest is proving difficult.
Yeah, but not only with cannabis. I mean, getting people to manifest for any cause is difficult. So it's not exclusive, on our cause. And yeah, we have to be smart of how to activate those people who are already there, because we have arrived to this situation because of many things. And so now it's the moment to overcome and to begin to walk back, because at some moment this was more alive. I mean, at some moment there was a more vibrant movement. Nowadays, I agree that the movement in terms of connection and visibility does not exist. But
just let me explain just to
potential.
people that lei mordata is it's like we know it in English as the gag law. So the gag law is like it's silencing people, and there's a lot of stuff tied up in that law. You can't put is it a groups of more than 3 are not allowed, and what's kind of been happening has people have been making protestations with holograms and projections and projecting stuff on the wall. But it feels like, because Spain would also always had a great tradition of people hitting the streets, and the manifestations for the Catalan independentistas has always been huge. And they really are winning this with this lei mordata. Do you think so?
Yes, well, I think that there's always this pendulum of the history, and as you say, for some moment in Catalonia, more than 1 million people was demonstrating for the freedom of Catalonia, and now only a few hundreds would go to the same demonstration. So a pendulum, does it exist? A pendulum?
Yeah, pendulum, absolutely.
Pendulum. So now it's not, it's a moment where we are going to the darkness, but things will come back, because it has happened and it will happen again. This is on our memories, ancestral memories. Go to the streets and burn everything, which is something good from time to time. So it will happen.
Yes, and I mean the French famously do it as well. So this, like, Ireland does not have a tradition of manifesting on the streets. We did for only one issue, which was water, which is amazing in a country that has nothing, only rain. And I guess that's what it was. Somehow it was an intrinsic thing to, why would we pay for stuff that when you can't stop water falling on us? Why would we have to pay for it? And it became a massive issue. But really, it has in 10, 15 years, it's the one real issue that has kind of socially driven people to get out on the streets. And in fairness, man, somehow I think that water is not a bad, of all the issues, water wouldn't be the worst thing to have to pay for,
Yeah.
if you're getting good water, because people don't a lot of the time. And here in Barcelona, we're still, I've got filters on my taps, and we've got to try and stop having to go for the shop all the time. So, so are you is there optimism to conclude? Is there optimism you have, I'm sure, because you're a fighter?
I think there's optimism because there are more than 2,000 clubs in Spain. So even though we didn't achieve the political recognition we want, and now we are struggling in Barcelona, the reality talks alone. I mean, this is something that has been slowly normalizing in different cities, in different places. There are challenges, of course, because there's always this conflict between the crime and the people who is doing proper stuff, and so it's always a struggle. But in terms of society, I think the Spanish society is doing quite good with cannabis, with drugs. We have a political problem because our main issue is politics, and it's not only about drugs. As you know, it's
Yeah.
wider. So we're trying to educate or to create our realities without taking care of the politicians, because we have lost so many energy waiting for them to do something. For example, 2 days ago, it was presented the medical cannabis
Yeah.
future law in Spain, which is basically, again, a shitty law. It's horrible. This is something only Belgium and Spain do not have a proper medical cannabis law inside Europe, at least that I know. So,
Oscar, we have one in Ireland. It's been there since 2017. There's still only 52 people on it. You know, so
well,
so you can be they're creating these things and they're so restrictive that it means nothing anyway. They had a law. I'm just to explain to people that there was a royal decree. I always hate the royal decree that's on medical cannabis just this week, and there's no flower. There's a bunch of conditions. It seemed very, I want your opinion on this. It seemed very pro pharma. It seemed very pro GW, particularly because the epidiolecs and sativix are still seem to be the only thing that can be considered as medical cannabis. And that's very pharma driven.
yeah,
What's your
and also, again, no, we were supposed to have a progressist and left political party, and it ends being a pharma oriented, and even doesn't change a lot for pharma because Sativex and Epidiolex were already there. So
Yes.
basically, they only allowed, and it's not already approved. So let's be careful because it's pain. It's always pain, and let's see what happens because it's not. They present it, but it's not approved. It's only for four pathologies, no, which is multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, nausea, vomiting due chemo, and refractory and chronic pain. So there's no self-cultivation, or only oral administration of magistral formula, and only medical specialists can prescribe it. And it can only be distributed through the pharmacies in hospitals. So it means that it cannot be distributed through local pharmacies. So basically, the same that you were mentioning in Ireland. Very restrictive, very pharma oriented, and not looking good for patients. So it's the voice of the patient has not been taken in account. It's
Yeah,
clear.
it's horrible, you know, and there's all sorts of nuances to patient conditions and stuff. It's like I have MS, but I don't have spasticity. So there's always this thing that it's for spasticity. It's not for this. I have chronic pain, but the chronic pain is full of conditions, and you need and unlike there are like there's a very similar access program in Denmark, for instance, which would be and I use Denmark always as an example because they're exactly the same demographic as Ireland. There's 6 million people living there, and they have a cannabis access program that has now got over 3,500 people. Well, I don't know where it's at now, 4,000 people on it. So we've got 52 in Ireland, same population. Denmark, 4,000 people. But the real difference is that they allow chronic pain and as a condition, and then it's not so restrictive, and you don't need consultants, which is what we have this thing that's been proposed in Spain as well, that you have to have a consultant. About ketamine all the time in Ireland, and it's got a bad rep in Ireland, to be honest.
Well, I think it has had a bad reputation, but the same happened to all drugs, no? When they were criminalized and they were put under the prohibition scheme, that's basically a propaganda machine. And this propaganda, to sustain prohibition, to sustain itself, has to create a big propaganda campaign. So that's why most of the people thinks that ketamine is a horse tranquilizer, no?
Horse tranquilizer, famously.
That's how prohibition wants to frame things. So people is scared of basically stupid things because at the end of the day, it's been ketamine. It's considered by the OMS one of the basic medications of humanity. You can check that on Wikipedia. That means that it's so the production of ketamine, it has to be protected because it's so widely used all around the world that it's not for horses, and I mean it's for humans. Basically, it's used in poorest countries to do surgeries, because as you know, in richest countries, when they do surgery and they put an anesthetic product to you, your respiratory system stops. So they have to connect you to a machine with most of the anesthetics. But that doesn't happen with ketamine. So ketamine is widely used in poor countries because they can do surgeries without the need of big machines, expensive machines. And it's used also in war zones a lot, in zones where access to equipment is difficult, because it has a huge potential for surgeries. And it has been used for 60 years. So it's one of the medications that it's more well researched, because we know all the interaction with all of the other medications. So ketamine is a super safe pharmaceutical compound. It's super safe. We basically don't see side effects if you do a proper screening, which is basically not delivering ketamine to people who has schizophrenic or psychosis or cardiopathologies. So if you do that screening, you reduce the risk, and it's super safe. So basically, in medical context, it has a few risks. And I have to now here point something important. We use intramuscular injection of ketamine. And in the US, that you know they are more used to make business, they use the intravenous administration. And the difference is that intravenous administration, it's more commercial because it's less psychedelic. Because as you can imagine, if you are receiving during 45 minutes a slow dose of ketamine, you get into a state which is not the same that if you get the same amount in one single injection. No, suddenly you receive a lot of the effects are very different. No, with one the administration is slow, and with the other is quick. So we are standing for psychedelic effects. We are standing for psychedelics to be used because of its psychedelic power, because in this psychedelic renaissance that it's very famous in the US, no, and that we all think that now psychedelics are legal, which is basically not. It's only white men doing business and investing in developing new pharmaceutical compounds which are psychedelic, but they are trying to reduce the psychedelic effect of the psychedelic. So they are looking for the neuroplasticity of the psychedelic. So it's basically a weird conversation. And because we belong to ICEERS and we belong to Synaptica, we stand to protect the knowledge of the communities that have been using those substances for centuries. First, there were the indigenous. Now, in our context, there's many facilitators, people that has a strong knowledge of how to use and a strong training on how to use that, because there's a risk that suddenly the psychiatric doctors that were the ones responsible of keeping this prohibited and keeping this saying this is horse tranquilizer, now they want to be the only ones that can use this. And most of them don't have experience with psychedelics themselves. So we don't want people that is not properly trained to bring other patients into those spaces without them having this experience before, because it's not honest. And we don't want drug wars to repeat itself. So we are trying to, with Clinica Synaptica, with ICEERS, to keep this, to overcome the war on drugs, to make this available for as most people as possible in secure and safe terms. And to keep this conversation open, not restricted again for experts, for rich people, for white guys, which is what keeps the drug war alive, no? Because basically the drug war is a big business, and it's a big war to protect your interest and basically your benefits. So here we are in a struggle to change the meaning of ketamine. It's not a tranquilizer. Of psychedelics are not the silver bullet for mental health, because it's not that easy. And in many aspects, we are standing for more community approach rather than expert approach to those.
It's been amazing, and look, keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to I'll put all the links for everybody. So he's going to send me lots of stuff, and I'll put it all into the into the description. So please look it up. And this is, I'm delighted to have Óscar. You're an amazing guy. And we meet each other around the town, and let's keep going, man. Thanks a lot, Óscar. Yeah.
My pleasure, and let's keep this conversation open.